Generic American host mom here with some thoughts on the letter to your host family. Part 1. Why is this letter so important? Most, if not all, student exchange programs involve having the visiting student write a letter to the host family to introduce themselves, but not necessarily vice versa. And let's think for a minute about why this might be. First, a successful exchange year involves the host family and the visiting student developing a mutually beneficial relationship. When expectations, desires, and requirements differ significantly, conflict can arise within the family, which can detract from the positive experience of a cultural exchange. And in the worst cases, these conflicts can result in a complete breakdown and an early end to the exchange experience. Second, the host family is taking on the responsibility for helping the visiting student integrate into their home, their society, and their culture. While the student exchange program experience goes two ways, it should be obvious that the visiting student will face the bigger challenges in their day-to-day lives. And third, host families, the host family has much more information available to them to understand the environment into which the visiting student will be embedded. The host family has most of the responsibility to identify a visiting student who will fit into their home, society, and culture. Consequently, the letters tend to be from the student to the host family describing the background, likes, and dislikes of the student so the host family can evaluate how well that student would fit. In this series of videos, then, I would like to explore what sort of things are useful in the Dear Host Family letter to provide the host family with the best chance of making a successful evaluation. Most importantly, these letters are not a competition. In writing your letter, you should not be trying to beat out other visiting students. Certainly, it is important to project yourself positively, but more about this later. From our perspective, as a host family, these letters that you are writing provide us with pretty much the only insight we get into who you are. There are going to be hundreds of families reading hundreds of different letters, and each family has a unique set of circumstances and are likely to connect with different set of points in these letters. You will have a much better chance of having a fulfilling year if you are placed with a family that shares some of your interests and some of your living style. So it is very important for you to be real in the letter. Don't fall into the trap of telling us what you think we want to hear. If you portray yourself something other than who you really are, you will probably be placed with a family well suited to the fictitious person you just created, and you are setting yourself up for a less than happy year overseas. And one point to address up front, because this is very important. We have heard that some students have an unrealistic expectation that if the match isn't good, I can just switch to a different family. Let's dispel that immediately. While it is true that some exchange students are able to switch to a different host family, it is far from easy to do so. Many of the schools in the United States do not allow exchange students to join once classes have started, so it is often not possible to switch schools, and usually very difficult to find an alternate family in the same school. When family-student matches go wrong, and they can, and they do, it is more likely to result in the student returning home early than it is in an alternative host family. So again, everything will go better if you are real in your original letter, if the person you describe is the person who is going to be showing up and spending most of a year with the family. Here's some general guidelines about what to include in your letter. Tell your family as much as you can about who you are and what you hope to experience in your exchange year. The more we know, the better we can identify whether you will be a good fit in our particular situation. Understand the difference between positive and negative points. Positive statements will connect you with a potential host family. Examples are statements starting with I do or I'm excited to try. Negative statements are those that separate you from a potential host family. Examples are I cannot or I don't want to. In general, try to stay positive, but where negative statements are important, be sure to include those as well. Things like I am terrified of snakes and I am afraid of loud noises. I am highly allergic to bee stings. I cannot live with people smoking in the house are all important considerations that will effectively eliminate a small number of potential host families and leave you with a more suitable match. Negative statements based on preferences that you are willing to tolerate should be avoided, especially when they are things likely to connect with a lot of families. Things like, I don't like going to school, or I don't like to get up before 10 a.m., are going to eliminate a larger number of potential host families. And if these are just preferences rather than medical needs, you will have done so for not a particularly good reason. So that brings us to the end of part 1. Follow along as we discuss parts of your letter, what to include and what not to include.